Hi, welcome to Made with Love by Daisy. In today's video, I will be showing you how to make this bikini for Barbie. In case you are not familiar with basic crochet stitches, please head over to my beginner crochet lessons. I will leave the link in the description box. For this pattern, I will be using the following supplies. Fine cotton thread. Some craft shops also sell them as lace thread or tatting thread. A 1.25 mm crochet hook, and you will also need a pair of scissors and a sewing needle that is suitable for the thread you have chosen. And very important, before you begin, do make a gauge swatch. 20 single crochets into 10 rows should give you a 5 cm by 5 cm square. Since this is a very small project, if your gauge is off even by 1 mm, it will make a big difference in the final project. Let's begin with the top, and I'll be starting with the cups. Start with a slip knot and chain 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm going to skip the first 3 chains and make a DC into the 4th chain. 1, 2, 3, and this is the 4th chain. And one suggestion I would give you is work over this tail as you are making this first row. It's a lot more easier than trying to sew in the tail later. So I've just placed the tail along with the chain, and I'm going to make 1 DC. And go ahead and make 1 DC in each of the next 2 chains. 1 and 2. So we've made 3 DCs. The 3 chains that we skipped at the beginning of this row also count as a stitch. So including that, we have 4 DC now. In the next chain, I will be making an increase by making 3 DC into the same stitch. So 1, 2, and 3. And you should be left with 4 chains. I'm going to finish this row by making 1 DC into each of the next chains. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now that I've finished this row, I'm going to go ahead and pull this tail snug. And I can trim the tail right away. So for row 2, I'm going to chain 2 and turn and skip the first stitch and go into the second stitch. So this sort of counts as the first DC2 together, because instead of the normal chain 3, we've only made a chain 2. Now make 1 DC into each of the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And now I will be making a DC3 together. 1, 2, 3, make 1 DC into each of the next 2 DCs, 1 and 2, and over the last 2 stitches I'll be making a DC2 together. And if you pay close attention, that DC2 together will be worked over this DC, and this last stitch you see here is the chain 3 we skipped at the beginning of row 1. So I'm gonna yarn over and pull up a loop, draw to 2. This can get a little fidgety, but yeah, just go into the top of the chain 3 that we skipped and finish the DC2 together. So now we're at the end of row 2. For row 3, chain 2 and turn. Again, we'll be skipping the first DC and go into the second one and make 1 DC. And this will, the chain 2 and the DC will form the very first DC2 together. Next, I will be making a DC3 together over the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, and 3. You should be left with 1 DC and the first DC2 together we made at the beginning of the previous row. So I'm going to make a DC2 together over those 2 stitches. So at the end of row 3, this is how it looks. I'm going to chain 2 and turn. And we will not be working into the very first stitch. And over the last 2 stitches, we will make a DC2 together. So we're almost done with the cup. And in order to finish this off, I will also be making the ties for the bikini top. So just make a chain 30. So I have 30 chains. I'm just gonna chain 1 and fasten off now. Pull that knot tight. And then I'm just gonna trim it. So here is 1 cup. You will need 2 of these cups for each top. This pattern is available for free on my channel. If you like this pattern, do consider purchasing the PDF pattern from my Ravelry store. That is a great way to support me, and it will help me to keep making more free content. You can find the link to my Ravelry store in the description box. The PDF version also includes the changes for curvy body type. Let's go ahead and join the 2 cups. Make a slip knot and do a chain 30. We will join by working slip stitches along the bottom edge of the cups. It doesn't matter which side is facing the front, just make sure that both cups are facing the same way. So we need to make 9 slip stitch along the base. So if you remember, we worked into 8 of the chains, and the very first one was the chain 3 we skipped. So we'll be working into the base of the 8 DCs and also the chain 3 that we slipped at the beginning of the row. To make things easier, I like to start by working into the chain 3 that we skipped at the beginning of the row. I find it easiest to flip it over and find that first chain 3 and make a slip stitch into that, and then make one slip stitch into each of the remaining 8 stitches. So I'm done with this, and now I'm gonna make a chain 3 between both the cups. So you can change this depending on how you want the bikini top to look. If you want the cups to be closer together, you can reduce the number of chains or not make any chains at all. You can experiment with how it looks and then go ahead. And now I'm gonna work across the base of the second cup exactly in the same way. So here is that first chain 3. I'm just gonna insert my hook. Make sure you grab at least one loop. That was one, and now I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch into the remaining stitches. And here's that last one. Now we'll finish off this top by making the ties for the other side. So just chain 30 and fasten off. And chain 1 and fasten off. Pull that thread tight and trim the excess. So here's a bikini top. If there's any stray threads, we can trim them later. If you are enjoying this video, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget that notification bell so that you do not miss any new content. Let's start with the bikini bottom. We will be working the front first and then do the back and join them both. So begin with the slip knot and chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now skip the first 3 chains and make 1 daisy into each of the remaining 3 stitches. And like before, while doing this, do try to work over the tails so that you don't have to sew them in later. So 1, 2, 3, insert your hook into that 4th chain, and I'm gonna place that tail over the hook so that I can work over the tail. So that's the first daisy, the second daisy, and the third. Row 2, chain 3 and turn. Make 1 increase into each of the next 2 daisies. 1 and 2, and increase into the next one as well. 1, 2. And remember to make 1 DC into that last stitch. So that is the chain 3 that we skipped at the beginning of the previous row. So this is how the front looks at the end of row 2. So for row 3, we're going to chain 3 and turn. And make 1 increase into the next stitch. So that was the first DC increase. Make 1 DC into each of the next 2 DCs. 1, oops, I have a double loop, so 1 and 2. Make an increase into the next stitch. 1 and 2, and you'll be left with the chain 3 from the beginning of the previous row. So make 1 DC into the top of the chain 3. Because the yarn and the thread, it's so small, so it can get really difficult to find that chain. Make 1 DC into that last stitch. So this is how it looks at the end of row 3. We're done with the front, so I'm just going to chain 1 and fasten off. And pull that knot tight. We will now be reattaching the yarn back at the other side of the foundation chain where we started. So since we worked over the tail is in this end now. I'm gonna make a slip knot. I'm gonna attach the thread right into the base of the chain 3 we skipped at the beginning of row 1. So you have 1, 2, 3 DCs, and this is the chain 3. So insert your hook into the base of that chain 3. And I'm also going to make sure that this tail is over here. And now just pull up a loop. And make a chain 3. 3. While working the next row, I'm going to make sure I work over this tail. This is the new tail from the thread we just joined here. So work at the base of these stitches. I'm going to make 3 DCs. 1, 2, and 3. So I'm just gonna pull both the tails in the opposite directions so that they are secure. For the next row, chain 3 and turn. Make 1 increase in each of the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, the first increase. And there's the second one. So 1 and 2, that's the second increase, and make 1 DC into that chain 3, or rather the top of the chain 3 at the end of the row. So that's end of row 2 at the back. Chain 3 and turn. Skip the first stitch and make 1 increase into the second stitch. 1 and 2. Make 1 DC into each of the next 2 stitches. 1, 2, and make an increase into the next stitch. 1 and 2, and make 1 DC into the top of that chain 3 in the end. So that's the end of row 3 of the back. Let's make row 4 of the back. Chain 3 and turn. Skip the first stitch and make an increase into the second stitch. 1 and 2. So make 1 DC into each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Make an increase into the next stitch. 1 and 2. Make 1 DC into that last chain at the end. And that's the end of row 4 for the back. And now chain 3 and turn. So we'll continue the back in the same way. So we make a chain 3 in the beginning and make 1 DC at the end to the top of the chain 3. So we'll continue making the back in the same way. So we'll chain 3, turn, make 1 DC increase into the second stitch, and then make 1 DC into each DC till you have only 2 stitches remaining. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you should be left with 2 stitches remaining. So that'll be 1 DC and 1 chain 3. So make an increase into the DC. 1, 2, and make 1 DC into that chain 3. So in each row what we're doing is we're increasing ones at each end, and the second stitch immediately after the chain 3, and in the stitch just before the last one. So continue working the next 2 rows like this. Make a chain 3 and turn, and then make an increase in the next stitch. Work 1 DC in each row right across until there is only the chain 3 and 1 DC left. Then make 1 increase and 1 DC in those last 2 stitches. So we are at row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the back. So you need to make 2 more rows just like this. So once you finish row 7, I will come and show you what to do next. At the end of row 7, your bikini bottom should look like this. We should have 16 DCs, including that chain 3 at the beginning of the row. Are you enjoying this pattern? Would you be interested in becoming a pattern tester for me? If your answer is yes, do follow at Made with Love by Daisy on Instagram so that you do not miss any new tester calls. Now we'll be joining the front and the back. Chain 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now fold over this piece so that you can work into the top of the front. So this is the 3rd row from the front where we left it off. So after the chain 10, just go in here and make 1 DC. Remember to work over this tail over here. Make 1 increase into the 2nd stitch. One, 2, make 1 stitch into each of the next 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you should be left with 2 stitches, the 1 stitch and 1 chain 3. So make an increase into the next stitch and make 1 DC into the top of that last chain 3. And pull that tail. Okay, there's way too many tails over here right now, and it's honestly a little confusing. I'm gonna trim these tails a little bit. So we've joined one side of the bikini bottom. Let's join the other side. Make a chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And now make a slip stitch into the top of this chain 3. The next row will be the last row, chain 3. I'm gonna turn my work. So in this row, I'm just gonna make 1 DC into each chain and each DC, basically 1 DC in every single stitch. So I'm going to finish this row and show you how I finish with an invisible join. So here's how this row looks right now. So I've made 1 DC in every chain and every stitch all across except this last DC. I just wanted to show you how I finished this row. So I'm gonna go ahead and make that last DC. I'm gonna leave a long enough tail and cut that end. And since I'll be doing a invisible join, I'm gonna pull out that tail. So we have the chain 3 here and the first DC here. Pass the needle under the 2 loops of the first DC and pull through. And now pass it back into the top of the same DC through which that yarn is coming out of. So we're basically creating a loop over the top and just tighten it so that that loop is the same size as all the other loops. And now we can sew in the tail and make a knot and fasten off. So I'm just gonna pass it through one of the stitches and then pass it through the same stitch again and take this tail and wrap it around the needle like that. Now that will create a knot. Now that is really secure. So just pass the tail into a few stitches, just to weave in the end. It's already secure, you just have to hide the tail now. So I'm happy with how it looks and I'm gonna go ahead and trim that. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed this pattern. If you make this project, do share your pics with me on Instagram by tagging @MadeWithLoveByDaisy, and do subscribe to my channel and check out my other projects as well. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, happy hooking!